Hello, I'm Kent Meyers.
I'm Mick Cornett, and it's time for The Verdict. As a part of its traditional and continuing commitment to public and community service, Crowe and Dunleavy Law Firm presents The Verdict, an objective discussion of contemporary legal issues hosted by Kent Meyers, and also brought to you by a friend of Oklahoma Lawyers for Children and Delta Dental Plan of Oklahoma. And welcome to The Verdict. I'm Mick Cornett. Today, another fascinating topic that affects all Oklahomans in one way or another. And to lead the discussion, as always, let me introduce one of Oklahoma's top legal experts and my co-host, Kent Meyers. And Kent, today we're talking about Indian tribes.
Yes, you're a native Oklahoman.
Yes.
I am as well, and we are proud to be from the state of Oklahoma. Let's look at a graphic to see what that word means. Oklahoma comes from the Choctaw language, Okla meaning people, and Humma meaning red. Of course, that means a literal translation of our state name is red people. That by itself is enough to give us a very close kinship to the Native Americans that live with us and among us and as a part of us. Oklahoma was passed in the 2000 census by California. California now has more Indians living in their state than Oklahoma does. However, Oklahoma still has the highest number of Indians per capita, or as a ratio or a percent of population. We have 8% of our population, about 270,000 Indians living in Oklahoma. And insofar as cities around the United States having Indian population, New York City has more than anybody else, as you might imagine. But Tulsa is 5th in the United States in Indian population, and Oklahoma City is 6th. So we have a kinship from our name to our neighbors, to our relatives, to everything we can think of insofar as having a close relationship with the Native Americans and the tribes. So today I want to talk about, or I want our guests to talk about, the relationship of the Indian tribes to the state and to the United States government.
I think it's a great topic because there is confusion, because it seems like in many cases there's one set of laws for Native Americans and Indian tribes, and there's one set of laws for everyone else.
Yes, and the reason it seems that way is because in many cases it is that way. We want to talk about smoke shops, we want to talk about Indian gaming, we want to talk about criminal matters, license plate matters, taxation matters, everything that we can think of.
All right. Well, I look forward to it. It's an interesting topic. Oklahoma's Indian tribes. We'll delve into the legal, financial, and political aspects, and we'll get started with our special guest when we return on The Verdict.
I enrich our cultural landscape.
I help define our quality of life.
I am one of 4,000 artists in central Oklahoma who receive
support from Allied Arts, this community's united arts organization.
I am an Allied artist.
It's got to be around here somewhere.
Don't worry, we'll find it. Just calm down.
I swear it was right here on the desk.
All right, if I were a Will, where would I be?
It's the only copy. Without it, we're out $3 million.
I know.
Hey, accidents happen. If a condom breaks
Or you have unprotected sex.
You have 72 hours to reduce
Your risk of getting pregnant.
It's called emergency contraception.
Got questions?
Call Planned Parenthood.
All children deserve a life of hope and love. But sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all of the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. Oklahoma Lawyers for Children has over 350 of the best attorneys and volunteers in Oklahoma County who donate their time and services to represent children. For more information, call 405-23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
And welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Meyers, and we're ready to discuss the issues involving Oklahoma's Indian tribes. Kent?
Well, we have two guests today that know more about this subject than most anybody, and I want to start by introducing them. On my right is Ross Swimmer. Ross is a former principal chief of the Cherokees for 10 years. He has also been head of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, appointed by President Reagan from 1985 to 1989. Ross is a lawyer, a banker, a resident of Tulsa, a longtime friend. And Ross, we're really pleased you come with us today and talk about these things.
Thank you, Kent. I'm looking forward to it.
On my left is the Honorable Enoch Kelly Haney. Senator Haney is from Seminole, is a member of the Seminole tribe, is a state senator from the town of Seminole, of the district, and is the chairman of the Appropriations Committee in the Senate. Quite a illustrious position.
Make you popular.
Make you popular. I want to now put up something else. I want to show a picture of Senator Haney. And there he is working on the Guardian. Senator Haney was selected by a blind decision-making process to sculpt the sculpture that is going to adorn the Capitol dome. It will be on top of the dome when the dome is finished. The sculpture is called The Guardian, and Senator Haney, you are certainly to be congratulated on your artistic ability and being the person that's going to craft what will be on top of our dome, hopefully for hundreds of years.
Well, thank you very much. I suspect they'll long forget I was a state senator and remember me as an artist.
Well, you are the first world-renowned artist. We've had some state senators on. You're the first world-renowned artist we have had on, and we're really pleased to have you.
Thank you, sir.
Let's talk with another graphic right off the bat. I want all of us to look for a minute at Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution, because I think we need to recognize early on that our forefathers considered the Indian tribes as sovereign nations. Article 1, Section 8 in part says Congress shall have the power to regulate commerce, but commerce with whom? Foreign nations, among the several states, and with the Indian tribes. It is clear that from the enactment of our Constitution, at least Congress and the forefathers thought that the Indian tribes were sovereigns and should be treated as such. Now, Ross, you were telling me before we started, actually, that sovereignty, insofar as Oklahoma is concerned, is kind of a newly found idea. Can you tell the viewers what you mean by that?
Ken, it really is. One has to be our age to remember a time when tribes were not so much in the news. I recall, in fact, when I was in law school in 1967, the only course on Indian law one could get was Joe Rarick's course on Indian land titles, which dealt with individual tribal members who had allotted restricted land. And the issue was it restricted, was it unrestricted? Indian sovereignty or tribal sovereignty did not exist in Oklahoma from 1906 until about in the early 70s. The courts have introduced sovereignty to Oklahoma. And for that period of time, essentially what the courts have said is that sovereignty was in a state of suspended animation. The 1906 Act was believed to have eliminated the 5 civilized tribes, as we know them, the Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw Creek, and Seminole. The other tribes were believed to have been terminated in the 1880s by their reservations being disestablished or at least put on hold. All of the land in Oklahoma, Indian land, was allotted at one time. The only reason for the tribes to continue in existence, and this was in the 06 Act, was to deed out or convey the rest of the land, either to individual Indian people or to the new state of Oklahoma or wherever. And as a result of that, we even had chiefs for a day. From 1906 until 1970, the chiefs of the 5 tribes were appointed by the President of the United States.
And you were only the second elected principal chief of the Cherokees.
That's right. Chief Bill Keeler served under a presidential appointment in 1949, and he and the other leaders of the 5 tribes managed to get the law changed in 1970 to allow for the election of the chiefs. And those were the only governments. There was no council, no court, no second chief, no constitution. The chief was it, and had sole authority to operate the tribes. But as I said, if you tried to look for a tribe, you couldn't find it. The office of principal chief of the Cherokee Nation was the office of Phillips Petroleum in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. We had no office. We had no tribal government to speak of. And so really for the last 25 years or so is when the whole sovereignty movement came to Oklahoma. And it came as a result of court decision much more than anything Congress did.
Senator Haney, just approximately how many tribes do we have in Oklahoma?
Oh, I'm never sure whether it's 38 or 39, but just give a little historic perspective. There are really 5 indigenous tribes to Oklahoma. And the one thing that I remind people that most of the tribes in Oklahoma, tribal governments and Indian people live here, are not here by choice, but are here by force. They were brought in by the federal government in a very tasteful way by the government to Oklahoma.
Like the Trail of Tears?
Like the Trail of Tears, that's true. Yeah, and all of the tribes came with that same type of tragedy.
And the Seminoles came from Florida,
They came from Florida. They had little luxury. They rode boats, by the way, so. But fact is, it's been a long journey for tribes to reestablish their governments to be able to take care of the people that they're responsible for, and in the process have been very helpful in the total community.
We hear the term Indian reservation. Do we have Indian reservations in Oklahoma?
You don't really have, by legal definition, an Indian reservation. On the maps, it shows the Osage as being a reservation only because the Osage retained their mineral interest, and it's called a mineral reservation. The reservations were terminated, disestablished in the late 1800s. Now, what has happened, again, through court decision over the years, Indian land in Oklahoma, individual allotted restricted land and reacquired tribal land in trust, is treated essentially as the same as a reservation would be out west. So today, as a result of the court decisions, there's really no distinction. So tribes that have reacquired land, many of the 5 tribes have, and land that is still held in restricted status by individual Indian people is considered reservation, or what might be called Indian country for Oklahoma.
I'm going to interrupt right there and get us to a break. We'll take a short time out and be right back. We're discussing Indian tribes in Oklahoma. What's your verdict?
Yeah, campfire's a lot of fun. You get to make some friends. You get to do some cool stuff. Campfire's for boys too, not just girls. But hey, campfire's definitely for kids. So call the campfire office nearest you to join in on the fun. 'Cause let's face it, you're not getting any younger.
St. Gregory's University has been changing the lives of people like me for 125 years. Affordable, private Catholic education, balanced with dedication to community and service, makes St. Gregory special. We're extremely proud of our students' outstanding academic achievements and our nationally ranked athletic teams. It's when you help a student build a future of balance, integrity, and service that you change a life forever. St. Gregory's, a community for life.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation under God, indivisible, with
liberty and justice for all.
Every day Americans make this pledge, but few think about its significance. It's our job to make justice a reality by providing legal representation for all citizens. Legal services, keeping the promise of America.
Every day, in state governments throughout the country, crucial decisions are being made that affect the lives of children and their families. But as this process takes place, children are often left voiceless. When these children raise their hands to be heard, is anyone listening? There are people listening. They are child advocates. Join us and raise your hand for kids.
We are discussing Oklahoma's Indian tribes. Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Meyers. Kent, where do you want to go from here?
Smoking. I want to talk about smoking. I don't smoke, but Senator Haney, we've heard much about how smoking is bad for you, how the government's going to try to discourage it by piling a lot of taxes on the price of a package of cigarettes, and we also know about Indian smoke shops. Indian smoke shops, as I understand it, are places where one can go to buy cigarettes at a much cheaper price than they might be able to at the grocery store or the 7-Eleven. What's the purpose behind Indian smoke shops? Why do we have them?
Well, first of all, I have to also say that I'm not a smoker, and I choose not to do that. I think partly it is, initially, the smoke shops came about as a way to raise revenue. I think the tribes were looking for a way to have capital to go into other types of enterprises, and at that time I think that became one of the focal points. That was a point of contention in the legislature because of the grocery stores and others who sold cigarettes and were concerned about that issue. The legislature has the ability to make compacts with the tribes on a number of issues, and that's one of the issues.
You mean just an agreement between the legislature and the tribe?
Well, it is. In fact, several years ago, I passed legislation that, number one, recognized the sovereignty of tribal governments, and secondly, we did not at the state level have the ability to compact or contract, whatever, with the states, and we gave ourselves that ability to do that. Once we did that, we're now in a position to be able to work out many of the problems that we faced before. And rather than go to litigation on some of these cases, I think it's always best to try to work things out. And the compact concept has really worked in some areas, and particularly in the area of tobacco. Now, we do have a compact with most of the tribes in Oklahoma who sell cigarettes, and so the state does, in fact, generate some income from that activity.
How much money is generated for the Indian tribes at the smoke shops?
You know, I don't have that number. I'm not sure what that is.
Well, is it good policy? Is it good Indian tribal policy to promote something that both the state and the federal government is really trying to discourage, and that is smoking, and to promote it by offering low-price cigarettes if the policy of the federal government and state government is to pile taxes on top of the cigarettes? Ross, what do you think?
Well, I don't think it's very good policy at all. I'm disappointed the tribes have taken on sort of the sin areas to raise their revenues, and that's really what has happened, whether it's smoke shops, the gaming, or other things. I have always said that economic development in a traditional form, where you're creating job opportunities, manufacturing, assembly jobs, whatever people can fit into, are much better than the sort of sin industries. So I find it very ironic that tribes are saying we want to be part of this massive lawsuit against tobacco companies, and they're out raising revenues by selling less expensive cigarettes. And there's an awful lot of illness in Indian country. There's a lot of diabetes, there's a lot of hypertension, heart disease, and all these things are exacerbated by smoking. And you would think that the tribes would be a little more responsible. You know, this is a leadership issue, and they have to make those kinds of decisions. I know that tribes are trying to raise revenues, to provide education programs, to enhance their health care programs. But at the same time, we know that smoking is very, very bad for one's health, and you're going to spend a whole lot of extra money trying to address those kinds of health problems by smoking. So I would hope that they would phase out of that, frankly, and get into more traditional industries.
Let me ask Senator Haney, as chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee, you obviously are worried about the revenue Oklahoma raises. And if one goes to a car dealership and buys a car, they have to put a tag on it, and they have to pay an excise tax to the state of Oklahoma, so that the state is getting excise tax money and tag money. And that money, according to statute, is divided or divvied up for general fund, for schools, for roads, for law enforcement, for wildlife. And yet, if a tribe issues a license plate, and there are about 20 different tribal license plates in Oklahoma, that money does not come to the state. And yet that car drives on the highways. Are the Indians paying their fair share?
I guess there's different ways to look at it. I think, first of all, the issue of car tags is really an issue of the exercise of sovereignty. As we discussed earlier, I don't think tribes make any revenue from this source. I don't see how you can. The other perspective from my viewpoint is that a couple of years ago, the legislature cut the cost of car tags to the tune of $21 million. And I know that because it comes out of the state budget that I administer. And so I don't think that would have happened if the tribes were not into selling tags at a lower price. I think that forced the legislature to cut the cost of tags in Oklahoma. So there is kind of a double-edged sword, if you might say.
Or competition.
It's competition.
And it's bringing the price down.
That's true. That's true. I don't think the tribes make that much from it, but let me also give you some other information we talked about earlier. The schools are compensated for Native American children who go to their schools a substantial amount. Oklahoma has gotten for years millions of dollars into their school system because Native children go to the schools for each one who goes. For instance,
federal money?
Federal money. For instance, now I have had more than 3 children. I've got 6, but I've had 3 in school at one time. For my children who were at the school, they were counted and were compensated for my children being in school, but at the same time as an Indian individual, not a tribe. I pay all of the taxes. So in a sense, I have paid double taxes, and so we have come up with more than our share when you talk about the school area for the amount of dollars, because the schools are getting a substantial number of dollars for those Indian children who are in the school system.
So without regard to the tribe, the individual Indian is paying property taxes, is paying income taxes and everything else, as long as they are not engaged in tribal activity.
That's true. There are some, there's exceptions to everything,
sure,
as you know, and there are some exceptions to that, but most Native people in this state pay every tax there is. There are some exceptions, and Ross knows what those exceptions are. May want to share that with us.
Well, we're going to have to wrap it up. He's going to have to do that if he'll come back next week, and we'll get into those.
Well, we hope you will come back next week, and we'll keep on going here.
Thank you. We'll be back with a few final thoughts when we return. You're watching The Verdict with Mick Cornett and Kent Meyers.
Hello, my name is Ted Smith. I'm president of the board of directors of the Oklahoma Disability Law Center. ODLC provides free legal services in civil matters to people with physical and mental disabilities.
I'm Mike Sykes, vice president of ODLC. For more information, call 1-800-880-7755.
The Oklahoma Disability Law Center provides high-quality legal services to people with physical and mental disabilities.
In Oklahoma, there are more than 1,600 children waiting to be adopted. They're of all ages, and for many, home has been a source of pain and conflict. They've dreamed of finding a better life and a loving family. Consider adoption. For more information, call 1-877-OK-SWIFT or visit the website www.okdhs.org. Adopt. It may be the toughest job you'll ever love.
Boy Scouts of America, where above all else, character counts.
Bringing out the best in each student. That is the simple goal and tradition of Heritage Hall. The
focus on the individual shapes the educational experience at Heritage Hall. Each student benefits from small classes, able, dedicated teachers, a solid academic curriculum, and exceptional co-curricular programs of athletics, arts, community service, and other activities, parental involvement, personalized counseling, and the development of responsibility, integrity, and love of learning. If you want education taught with pride, then you want Heritage Hall.
We're back on the verdict. And Ken, I know there was so much more we wanted to get into, but fortunately we'll have another opportunity.
Yes, we're kind of learning as we go along on these verdict shows that we do a show, we get good guests lined up, and we never have enough time to cover what we want the viewers to hear about and learn about, and we want to learn about. So we've kind of anticipated that in this situation, and we're going to ask our two guests, Senator Haney and Ross Swimmer, to come back for next week's show, and we're going to continue the discussion. And I think we're going to talk about such things as Indian gaming, which we didn't get into, and I know many of our viewers are going to be interested in that. You know, we have a wonderful Oklahoma Indian heritage that we are all proud of, but it isn't without some problems. It isn't without some clashes from time to time, and those are natural. But the nice thing to hear is that these are being worked out by compact or by agreement between the tribes and the states. One other thing, Mick, I want to mention to our viewers, I hope you will log on to the Verdict website, which is www.theverdict.tv. There you'll see some interesting information. You'll see all about all of our prior shows. And you will have an opportunity to ask us questions, to give comments about these shows that you're seeing, and to perhaps suggest new shows. So we're proud of our website. We're proud of the verdict, and particularly because of guests like we had today.
Well, I think the key there also is it's not .com, it's .tv, theverdict.tv, yes, which is a fairly new type of address. But yeah, I look forward to it. I know our bios are on there. Have you checked it out yet?
I haven't.
Yeah, that's right. You need to check it out. I have visited. Thanks again to our guests, Ross Swimmer and Kelly Haney. For Kent Meyers, I'm Mick Cornett. We'll see you next time on The Verdict. This program was brought to you by Crow and Dunlevy, a professional corporation, and also brought to you by a friend of Oklahoma Lawyers for Children and Delta Dental Plan of Oklahoma.